Hi there, this is Erik the Linguist again. Following the previous episode on passive voice, in this tutorial we are going to talk about the motivations behind using passive voice. So if you're interested in knowing more about the structure of a passive voice, you may like to check our previous video. Previously, I talked about English verbs having two kinds of voice, those being active voice and passive voice. There is actually a third type of voice we call middle voice, but to simplify the matter, we will stick with these two types of voice for the time being. So, what would be the motivations behind us using passive voice? So let's take a look. The first motivation would be either the actor is unknown or we think the actor is not important. I took this example from a student who cited this article, which is titled, "What Wasteful Fast Fashion Retailers Can Learn from Chinese Empress Dowager." And one paragraph inside the article goes, during the reign of the Eastern Han Dynasty's Emperor Zhang, a song was heard in the capital. When the city's fancies put on hair, women elsewhere raised their hair by one cheek. When the city's fancies thick eyebrows, women elsewhere drew theirs to cover half of their foreheads. When the city fancies big sleeves, women elsewhere make theirs with a whole bolt of cloth. In the sentence, a song was heard in the capital, in the second line, passive voice is used because whoever sang the song isn't actually important, or no one really knows. Or you might want to say that because the topic in this passage is about the song, it is essential that the sentence uses a song as the subject. I would also like to use an essay written by a student I found on the internet about animal testing. And the concluding paragraph reads, all in all, it can be said that using animals for medical research is ethical, as long as it contributes to scientific development and helps scientists find ways to improve human health. And this practice is only acceptable on the condition that necessary pains are minimized and animals are treated humanely. There are a couple of more examples in the paragraph, but I would want to focus on the first one, it can be said. In this case, the pronoun it does not have any meaning, but is a dummy subject. Although the writer can say, we can say that in active voice, but when the argument is more important than the writer, it is preferable to use passive voice to background the writer's voice. And of course, just a disclaimer, this example paragraph on animal testing does not represent my stance. Thank you. So the next motivation behind using passive voice would be we choose to hide the actor. Okay? Not because they're not important, but because they are important. So somehow we need to conceal them from the sentence structure. For example, so one day Erik was being a little bit careless and broke the vase. So the sentence will say, Erik broke the vase in active voice. And if we choose to background the one who does the action of breaking, we can say the vase was broken by Erik. And if we want to further conceal Erik the culprit, we can do something like this. The vase was broken, full stop. We would just simply delete the prepositional phrase by Erik. So now this sentence would look as if it's just someone who broke the vase, but not anyone in particular. And if we want to push it to the extreme, we can simply say, the vase broke. And concealing the actor in a sentence would be favored by governments or corporations because the bureaucratic voice would hide the agency from the sentence. Okay, so according to an article from Long Reads, it's called The Elements of Bureaucratic Style. The writer says, the bureaucratic voice presents governments and corporations as placid, apologetic, and unmovable. It also, interestingly, makes their victims as active as possible. The article used the United Airlines UA3411 accident as an example. The incident, just put shortly, involved an Asian passenger being forcibly removed from the plane. In the email the CEO sent to the staff, one of the lines reads like this: our employees followed established procedures for dealing with situations like this. So when the actions are in favor of the UA staff, the writer would use active voice. In contrast, when the CEO mentions the passenger, the sentence would read like this: he was approached a few more times after that in order to gain his compliance to come off the aircraft, and each time he refused and became more and more disruptive and belligerent. I want to first focus on the first line. When it comes to the action involving the security personnel upon the passenger, that means approaching, the writer would choose to use passive voice, so we have the passive was approached. The effect would be the passenger would now be the focus of description, implying that he was not cooperative. And note the end of the sentence. He was described as an aggressive man. So, as a PR writer, one might carefully choose the kind of voice in sentences in order to achieve the effect he or she desires. The third motivation behind using passive voice would be to keep the subject as topic of discussion. So I have explained it elsewhere inside this tutorial. As I mentioned, by using passive voice, the topic of discussion will be put at the subject position. So let me use the student essay on animal testing again. And there is a passage that reads, furthermore, causing animals to die in medical experiments is often the reason for animal rights supporters labeling scientists as cruel. However, even though 99% of animals' death is caused by farmers, they do not oppose them. If you notice, as I highlight the noun phrases before the main verb, we have in the first sentence, causing animals to die in medical experiments. Okay, and in the second sentence, the topic of the sentence would be 99% of animals' death before the main verb. Okay, so in this sense, the writer tries to maintain the topic about the death of animals by putting them at the beginning of each sentence, and then in the second sentence, passive voice has to be used in order to maintain the topic. So some of you might wonder, is it actually okay to use active voice in the second sentence? For example, farmers cause 99% of animals' death. They do not oppose them. Grammatically, it's perfectly fine. But when it comes to writing, there are more considerations that we need to take than just maintaining the correctness or the accuracy of grammar. So in this case, if you insist on using active voice in both sentences, you will have two different topics being mentioned in each sentence. Okay, so the first sentence we are mentioning animal death, okay, as the topic, and in the second sentence, it seems that we have switched the topic hastily to just talk about farmers suddenly. Okay, so this causes a break of linkage between the two sentences. So we can say that using passive voice is not just a kind of structure for us to show variety, let's say, but it's more like keeping the consistency of the topic within a paragraph. Okay, so here it is, the three motivations of using passive voice. So let me summarize them in the following slide. Okay, here it is, the three motivations. 1. The actor is a noun or an important. 2. The writer intends to hide the actor. And 3. The writer intends to keep the subject as the focus of the topic. So that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you're interested in knowing more about the knowledge of language, the power of language, and the studies on language, please follow this channel by subscribing below. Okay, again, thanks for watching. Ta-ra!